glad that you are here today. We are going to be in Acts chapter 17, if you want to turn over there in your Bibles. I could lie to you and tell you we're going to be there all class long. At the moment, I'm not anticipating jumping anywhere else, but you know how this works. So, if you weren't here for first service, in the sermon we end up looking at this text, but we don't look at Paul's words to the church in Athens very, very detailed, just kind of read through them. What Paul does here is he kind of gives us a master class for teaching about Jesus to a group that does not have a shelf space for our God. It's easier if you talk to people, who kind of grew up reading the Bible or maybe going to VBS. They kind of know who Jesus is. They kind of know that story. A little bit easier to talk to them about Jesus. But what if you... Oh, man, I should have put a screenshot up here. Did you know that we have a very active witch society in this part of the world? Okay, so what if you know somebody who was raised by a witch and all they know is witch stuff and they don't know anything about the Bible other than it's just a book full of fairy tales? How do you talk to that person about God? Very carefully. I would agree, right? We don't want to do anything that makes it harder for people turning to the Lord. That's very biblical, Acts chapter 15, I believe. So what we don't want to do is say something that will cause problems. I haven't done it in a little while, but there was a time here where Cooper and I very regularly were going over to the OTC campus right across the way here every Thursday. And what we would do is we'd show up with coffee and pancakes or donuts or something, and we would partner with Christian Campus House. If you're not familiar with them, they're one of the ministries that we support. They do ministries on college campuses in and around this area. And what they try to do is they try to talk to people who really don't know anything about the Lord. And they kind of create a youth group, but at college. And so we show up there and we usually posted a question of the day. At the beginning of the semester, it was something like, does pineapple belong on pizza? And people are very opinionated about that kind of stuff. So you get people to come by and, you'd get to talk to them a little bit. Okay, hey, what are you studying? Oh, cool, all right. Well, hey, does pineapple belong on pizza? I agree, great. Mark it up on the board and we're going to tally it up. Well, then the next week it might be something like, is there evil in the world? And you and I are sitting here going, of course, have you not opened your eyes? But what's interesting is you'd get people who'd show up and go, no, there's nothing evil in the world. I'd be like, interesting, let's talk about that for a minute. What do you mean that there's nothing evil in the world? Well, evil is in the eye of the beholder. So, you might see something as evil, but somebody else might see it as good, and so we can't argue about it. And I said, okay, so if somebody shows up at your house and kills your whole family, that's okay. Well, no. So, but the person who did it thinks it's totally fine, so it's okay, right? Well, no, that can't happen. Okay, so there are things that are wrong to happen to you. Well, yeah. Okay, great. Now, we started with something like pizza, and throughout the semester, now we're having questions about who did Jesus say he was? Do you believe that Jesus was the Son of God? Why or why not? And now we're having these conversations, and you get people come up and go, well, there's no historical proof that Jesus was ever real. Really? Okay, so you're a student and you like studying this? Oh yeah, I'm very studied up on that. Okay, go read this writer. How do you spell that? And we'd write it down. They go look at it, and they come back the next week and they go, so I read that guy. He wasn't a Christian, was he? Nope, he wasn't. He's a Roman politician. Yeah, he really didn't like Christians, did he? Nope. Yet he said Jesus was real. It's like, interesting. What are you going to do with that? So again, we started with pizza. And by the end of the semester, we're actually having really deep conversations about Jesus. And I think what happens sometimes is we get Christians who are so scared to even broach the topic that we stay silent. That's one extreme. The other extreme is that we try to remove somebody's tonsils with a chainsaw spiritually. Can you remove tonsils with a chainsaw? You sure can. But is it the healthiest and the wisest way to do it? Probably not. So maybe we start somewhere here, and as we get to know people and as we get to form a relationship with them, we can keep working this way until we're actually doing the deep, hard work of removing things from their lives and pouring life into them. So Paul does that in a very condensed way. He doesn't spend a lot of time in Athens in the narrative. He's only there for a very short amount of time. But what he does is he allows us to see, how do you talk to somebody who really knows nothing about the God that you follow, who really knows nothing about the Savior that you serve? How do you talk to them, and how do you reach them? So let's look at it, and we're going to look at it kind of slow and in detail. Again, if you were here first service, it's going to sound familiar, but we're going to break this down a lot differently than we did in the sermon. So Paul is in Athens. Athens is well known for its thinkers. All the people stand around and talk about ideas. You ever heard of Plato? You ever heard of Aristotle? You ever heard of Socrates? Those guys thrived in this area. And it's those type of people that Paul finds himself addressing. Why? Because he wouldn't shut up at Walmart. That's why he's there. Paul is just being Paul. He's just talking about Jesus wherever he is. And so what he's doing is he's just being a Jesus follower. And because he's willing to talk about Jesus, people have questions. So they say, hey, come tell us more about that. We want to hear what you have to say. So they bring him to the meeting of all the people that think about these ideas. They want to hear what he has to say. So he says this to them. Oh, P.S. If you weren't here for first service, you may not know this. Paul is just on a layover at Athens. He's not there intentionally to do mission work, but he is an intentional missionary. Wherever he is, that's the mission. And as he's just waiting around Athens, he sees all these idols to all these gods. Now, you and I may not... what movie was that? I keep using this theme, and I can't remember what the movie was. I always want to make it an Indiana Jones movie, but it's not an Indiana Jones movie. There's a movie. Must not be a very good movie, but there's one scene that's etched into my mind. There's this guy, maybe it was The Mummy. Maybe some scary something, right? Woolly Booger is coming after this guy. He's terrified of it, okay? And you can see him, and he knows like he's about to die, right? And so he's like digging down in his shirt, and he pulls out a cross, and he starts saying, Hail Mother. Is that The Mummy? Okay, it's The Mummy. All right, and he just starts saying all these Christian prayers, and the scary thing keeps coming at him. Is it a mummy that's coming at him? Okay, the mummy keeps coming at him, okay? So then he drops the cross, and then he pulls out a Star of David, and he starts, muttering in Hebrew, and it keeps coming at him. And then he pulls out he's just going through every religion he can to try to find something that works. Okay? That is a really good snapshot of the way the world was. And P.S., in some ways it still kind of is. Okay? We'll just jump onto whatever it is and see if it helps. If it doesn't help, cool, I'll just jump over here. And if it doesn't help, cool, I'll just jump over here. And so in Athens, that was kind of institutionalized, right? There's all these gods out in the world. They all have power. They have power over different things. And you don't know which one has power over your socks today. So you better worship them all. Otherwise, something might happen to your feet. Okay? Like, that's the way the world was. But what if there's a God that we don't know about? We don't want to offend one by not worshiping him. So what do? Let's make an altar to all the ones we don't know. So they made an altar to the unknown God, to an unknown God. Great. We'll worship all the ones we know. We'll worship at this one, and anybody who's got a problem with it, we can go, we covered you. Didn't know your name, but we covered you. And Paul uses that to talk about Jesus. Now let's be honest. If you see people all steeped in idol worship, how many of you are going to start with like a word of positive congratulations to the people you're talking to? Again, I would tend to walk in here and go, y'all are a bunch of idiots. Seriously? You're wasting your time doing this kind of stuff? There's a reason why God sent Paul there and not Matt there, okay? Paul doesn't do that. He starts out by commending them for something. This is verse 22 of Acts chapter 17. He says, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you're very religious. For as I walked around and I looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. P.S. What does ignorant mean? Don't know. I am ignorant of appendectomies. You don't want me working on your appendix. You really don't. I am ignorant of computer programming. You don't want me reprogramming something, your robot. It will blow up, most assuredly. I don't know about it. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm stupid. If you don't know how to cook, you're ignorant about cooking. If you don't know how to fly an airplane, you're ignorant about flying an airplane. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you can't learn. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just simply means you don't know this. What did they just put on an altar? We don't know. And so Paul's coming up and going, I do. I do know one of those gods you don't know. So let me tell you about the God that actually is going to take care of all of this. He doesn't insult them. You're very religious. You're concerned about worshiping God. Let me tell you about the only one that really matters, and you've self-professed. You don't know about him. So let me tell you about him. This is verse 24. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. Now, to me, that's an astonishing statement on a couple different levels. Number one, what do you think you would find on pretty much every street corner in Athens? A temple. And what did they believe about those temples? God lives there. And you would have priests and priestesses in attendance that would serve that God. God who made the world and everything in it is Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands, and he's not served by human hands, as if he needed anything. Well, then what in the world am I supposed to do? If he doesn't live in a building and he doesn't depend on me to serve him stuff at the temple, what am I supposed to do? Now think about that, and think about where Paul has spent a sizable amount of his time in his life. A town called Jerusalem. What's in Jerusalem? A temple, and what did everybody believe about that temple? God lives there. But think about what Solomon said when he dedicated that temple. He prayed, but will God really live in a house made of stone? He's too big for it. I mean, the earth is his footstool. Good grief, he can't fit in that building, right? And so there's always this acknowledgement that God's presence would be there, but his presence is actually everywhere. And so the idea behind Paul saying this is very, it's very eye-opening to me, is that when he's talking about the God that we typically will read about in the Old Testament, think, yeah, he lives in the temple in Jerusalem. Paul's got a much broader theology than that. Your Old Testament does too. But the way that Paul is talking about it compared to the way that maybe some of his Jewish Pharisee brothers and sisters would talk about it in the New Testament time are very different. And Paul's saying, look, you don't have to go to a building of stone. That's not what it's about. It is about the God who is Lord of heaven and earth. So if he's Lord of earth, where are you going to go that he's not in charge? Well, we don't tend to think this. We were watching a TV show last night. TV show doesn't matter, but it was showing a camera of a car driving down the road, and it was driving down the street, and it was passing a sign that said, "You're now in tiger country." Apparently the tiger was the mascot of whatever sports ball team was in their area. You're now in tiger country. Okay, we sing the praises of the tiger around here, right? Okay. What's the phrase that gets used up here? Chief's nation? Kingdom? Chief's kingdom? Okay. Chief's kingdom, right? Okay. So let's just for a moment pretend that our football mascots are gods. Pretend. After all, if they were a god, what we would do is we would bring monetary sacrifices and gather together in a stadium and sing its praises for hours on end and wear the proper robes of worship that mirrored the god. And, you know, we might chant certain songs or sing certain praises to. There's a book I'm going to recommend you read, and it'll ruin your life. It's called You Are What You Love by James K.A. Smith. There's a lot of James Smiths on the world. Apparently, there's a lot of James K. Smiths. This is James K.A. Smith. You are what you love. He does a fantastic way of showing that sometimes our lives very much mirror the worship of ancient deities. And so he just kind of leaves you with this argument of, were all the ancient deities and all the, demons that Moses talks about being worshipped in Deuteronomy, were they not real? Like, were they just, the people just didn't know better, they weren't real? Or do they masquerade themselves in different ways today so that they're much more palatable for us? I'm just going to leave that with you. You can read the book and love it or hate it, either way. But let's just imagine for a moment that our sports teams were gods, okay? The mascot was a god. Where do I have to travel before I am in, let's keep it college, Razorback territory? Where do I have to start worshiping the Razorback to fit in? Is it the state line? Where is that state line? Because I see some red flags every now and again in Springfield, so I'm not sure which sports team I have to worship sometimes, right? Okay, you're starting to understand their understanding of gods. They're territorial. So if I go into this area, I'm going into the area of that god, and if I want to be well here, I need to worship that god. That's very common sense in that world, right? So if anybody in Athens, if you said, well, the temple of my God is in Jerusalem, they're like, okay, well, never been to Jerusalem. If I go there, I'll remember to stop by and worship him so that, I'm good. But what if you know that he's Lord of everywhere? And wherever you've been, you've walked on his territory. And you haven't worshiped him. Well, number one, oops. And number two, if his territory is really everywhere and I'm worshiping some other god on his territory, double oops. But I also haven't been struck down yet. He hasn't smited. Smoted. He hasn't struck me down yet. I'm still sucking air, right? So this is an odd predicament, right? Now, have you ever met somebody or seen somebody somewhere that would say something along the lines of, well, I don't know if there is a God or not, but if there is a God, he hates me? What would be a good question to ask them? Okay, maybe. What do you believe in? What? I would follow it up with a question of like, tell me about that. What would make you come to that conclusion? That if there is a God, he would hate you. Oh, I wouldn't like the way that I'm living. Well, what's wrong with the way that you're living? Whoa. Well, gods don't love people. They're just out there to serve themselves. Really? Okay. What if I told you that I know about a God that actually gave himself up for the sake of others? Like if you were to give your life to save this person, would we say that you were out after yourself? Well, no. So again, not just blindly pushing people away, not just blindly criticizing people. What he's doing is he's setting up a situation. He knows them. He knows his audience. What are their struggles? What are their beliefs? We're going to see that come into play in just a minute. What is it that they fear? What is it that they treasure? And he presents God to them in that way. I'm afraid of upsetting a God that I don't know about. Ooh, okay, he's telling me one I don't know about. I'm going to listen. Okay, have I been to this God's territory before? Oh, I'm standing on his territory. Oops. Oh, you mean he's the God of heaven too? P.S., that's an important one. All the gods live in the temples, yes, but where is their domain? The heavens. If this is the God of the heavens, then who's the chief God? The God Paul's talking about. Doesn't compare to the other gods. So in a very short and clear way that they get, this is the only God you really need to pay attention to. So he's got their attention. Look at how he presents this. He says, this is verse 25, he's not served by human hands as if he needs anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. Do you think his listeners were alive and sucking air? He's saying that's a gift from God. He's not mad at you. He's giving you good gifts right now, even though you don't know who he is. Does that sound like an angry God to you? Does it sound like a God that hates you? Does that sound like a God that's offended by everything you do and wants to strike you from the earth? No. Everything good you have in your life came from that God. Interesting. That's a different way of presenting God than he hates you because you. Don't tell me there's not Christians out there that do that. That's not how Paul presents it. Everything good in your life he has given you. Verse 26, from one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. Let's pause right there for just a second. Can somebody tell me what part of your Bible Paul is alluding to right there? Genesis, because it always works its way back to Genesis, doesn't it? P.S., guess where we're going to be in September when school starts? Genesis. Yes. Looking forward to it. He goes back to Genesis, right? From one man, God made all these nations. So what is he saying about himself in relation to his audience? Say it again. I'm part of you. We're connected because the same God made us. We all came from one. In a weird, strange, roundabout way, we're family. Not you awful, horrible people over there. I can't believe you Gentile. We're one. We're united in this. Now, let me ask you a question. I don't care how you voted. I don't care what your view is on any hot button political issue. I don't care where you were born. Does life hurt? Is life difficult? Are there things that you hear about in the world that make you want to cry? Are there things in this world that are so painful you don't even want to pay attention to it? Can you agree that there are problems in this world that are bigger than you and I can fix, and only a God would be able to deal with the problem? I don't care how you vote. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you were born. You're going to agree on some basic things. Paul goes back to what they could all agree on. That's where he starts. He doesn't make the hot button issue the issue. We're in this together. God created all of us. He created all the nations. He brought us all from one. We're in this together. You're trying to get through life the best you can. I am too, and we're serving the same God, whether you know it or not. So let's get on the same page here. He's riffing off of Genesis, and look at verse 27. God did this by splitting up all the boundaries. This is Genesis 11, Babel kind of stuff. He split up all the boundaries so that the nations, the different groups, would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he's not very far from any of us. So what does that tell you about the God? Is he far off and distant and doesn't want anything to do with you because you don't know him? He's really genuinely hoping you find him. He's actively doing things in the world to have you have an encounter with him. He longs for you to know who he is. Again, that's very different than the angry God throwing lightning bolts on a mountain somewhere. And he's not far from us. Look at verse 28. Did you see quotation marks around verse 28? Paul's going to quote two poets. For in him we live and move and have our being, end quote. As some of your own poets have said, quote, we are his offspring, end quote. Now, I want you to pause right there. Look back over at verse 18. In Acts chapter 17, verse 18. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Epicurean and Stoic. Does that mean anything to you? Just two different groups of people, right? They got to be different somehow. Maybe it's political parties or something. I don't know. Stoics believed in human sufficiency. Humans are the end all and be all. They believed in equality for all. It doesn't matter who you were. It doesn't matter what you were born into. It doesn't matter what nation you came from. We're all equal as humans. They had a deep sense of duty, that you have something in your life that you are really called to do and you need to accomplish it in the world. And they believed that God was both in the world, but he was also within you somehow. So we might call him omnipresent in their view. But he was also within you. That's the Stoic view. The Epicurean view, they're for pleasure. Pleasure is the end-all, be-all. If you can find something that you enjoy, man, you ought to do it. That's what it's about. They were very much people of peace. We don't need to fight. There's no need to go to war. If we can mediate an argument, let's do that. We're not gonna fight about it. They didn't like pain. If we can do anything to remove the pain of a situation, we will do it. They had a distinct fear of death. They really wondered what was on the other side, and they were afraid of it. They believed that God didn't care. The gods were just there to entertain themselves. Humans were created just to be servants and, I don't know, like chess pieces on a board that the gods were bored with. They didn't care. They were far off. They were distant. They didn't have anything to do with you. Now notice what Paul quotes. We're going to go back to verse 28. For in him we live and we move and we have our being. Which one of those sounds more in line? Stoic or Epicurean, if you were taking notes? Stoic. Very good. Would you be shocked to know that that philosopher is Epimenides? Paul quotes him twice. He quotes him here and he quotes him in Titus chapter 1. Anybody care to guess what Epimenides' view of the world was? He was a Stoic. And look at the next quote. As some of your own poets have said, quote, we are his offspring. That's from Aratus. He was a Epicurean, I believe. I'm trying to do that from memory. These two guys, Paul is quoting two different sides of the argument. He's quoting things from their own day. This would be as if you were talking to a young person and you were trying to get them to understand a truth about God by quoting the great prophetess Taylor Swift. Okay? Just because somebody doesn't, and this is not I don't know anything about Taylor Swift other than my brother had his picture made with her long ago, okay? That's the only thing I know about her. Couldn't tell you a song, nothing. This is not a statement on her, okay? If somebody doesn't know the whole truth about something, does that mean that everything they know and everything they say is always wrong? I mean, a broken watch is right twice a day, right? So could I find something that somebody knows that I don't agree with everything they say, but they make a really good point that I can use to talk about something that's true about my God? So what if somebody is just totally enmeshed in the world of video games? Could I talk about how video games might mirror life, but not really? Because you know what happens if you die in your video game? Well, I just get another chance. Okay? What if I told you that you only get one chance to play the level you're on? Might you want to know more about the game you're playing? Might you want to know a little bit more about the game designer and how he designed it to work? Do you want to know the cheat codes? Okay. I don't care anything about video games, but did I just use something that somebody might care about to talk about that? Okay? So that's what Paul does. He's using something that's near and dear to these people's hearts, and he's going to present the truth with it. So he quotes their own people. Here's this foreigner talking about some foreign god, and he knows our poets. And he quotes our poets. Interesting. I firmly believe that you get to a certain age when your brain is just full of music and you can't hold any new music. Anybody else feel like that? There is a truck that I drive occasionally that has a radio station that's on it. I didn't set it, I didn't do it, I never touch it. But in the background it plays songs I remember from my childhood, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I looked at the frequency that was there, and I was like, I should tune my truck to that. So the next time I got in my truck, I tried to tune over to that station, and it was playing music I didn't recognize. I'm like, turn that off. It's not what I want. We can get stuck in our ways like that. We can go, oh, there's nothing good out there. I just tune out from society. If you tune out from society, you tune out on how to reach society. I used to be very much, just forget the news. I don't want to know what's going on in the world. I'll know what's going on with my people, and life will be great. P.S., I'll tell you, life is pretty great that way. People are all freaked out about, did you see the... Nope, not a clue. Hasn't bothered me for 3 weeks. That happened 2 months ago? Not a clue. There's a lot of things our world gets freaked out about that we can do nothing about, and that if you didn't know about it, you know what? You'd be able to focus on things that matter. However, if we don't know what alarms and bothers and disturbs the people around us, and at the same time, if we don't know what they turn to and what soothes them and what calms them and how they process it, we miss out on really good opportunities to have good God-centered conversations with them. Paul knows his audience. Paul knows what they deal with. Paul knows how to reach them. Look down at verse 29, because I'm talking too much. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. That's all that they're familiar with. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance. But now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. And he has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. Now, did Paul say everything he needs to say in theology in one sermon so that somebody who's baptized that day can start preaching the next day and know all the answers to all the questions? No. And I'll be honest, I've tried to preach sermons like that. I want somebody to just brain dump, right? If you've never heard it, here's everything. Paul doesn't do that. He presents to them enough where they know, hey, what I'm doing right now is not right. I am neglecting the God that's in charge of everything, and I'm going to be judged for doing that. And the one that's going to judge everything is the one he raised from the dead. I need to find out about that guy. Now, Paul didn't preach this sermon and just hop on his chariot and away he rides. He stays there. And they want to talk to him more, and he's willing to talk to them more. This may not connect with any of you. but it connected with me because I was a sports fan, a Texas Rangers fan. Please don't hiss or boo. There was a young player in our farm system that was coming up that everybody said, this is the next Babe Ruth. When this kid looks at a baseball, it leaves the park. It's so afraid of him. And I was watching this kid in the minors, and he's coming up. It's like, man, I don't know. He's in AAA, and like they can't pitch to this kid. He's like, oh, man, he's amazing. He gets up to the major leagues in his first game, his first 3 at-bats in his first game. Guess what? Out of the park. Knocks them out of the park. Nobody knows how to pitch to this guy. Now, I would wish that was the end of the story. They found out how to pitch to that guy pretty quick, and he quit doing that. And because that guy always got to the plate and always wanted to hit a home run, it weakened him. He wasn't willing to swing and take the single. He wasn't willing to, hey, I'll bunt over here and I'll get on base. He wanted to swing for outside of the stadium every time, and it was his downfall. Folks, don't be like that player. Don't think that every conversation you have with somebody has to be a Babe Ruth home run. Sometimes a bunt moves everybody a little bit to where they need to be. Being involved in the game is what's important. Having the conversation is what's important. And if you can open the door where somebody is closed-minded to the concept of any God to moving to, well, there might be a God out there. Now at least they're open to the idea. And we get a lot of people that I talk to over the day. I don't know. I don't know the Bible as well as you, so I can't talk to them as well as you. I can't talk to them as well as you. I don't know them. You do. Talk to them a little bit. Ask them questions. So here's what I'd like to do in the 3.5 minutes we have left. I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to discuss this question. What do people in our world, not necessarily in our area, maybe in our area, what do people in our world fear? What are they afraid of? What keeps them up at night? What gives them heartburn and ulcers? What do people in our world fear? 30 seconds. Ready, set, go. Okay, that's 30 seconds. What did you come up with? What do people fear? Truth, dying, failure, self-image. Oh, please tell me that people aren't concerned about how they look in this world, right? We got apps dedicated to how good can you look on a camera, right? Financial ruin. The state of the world, right? It's crazy out there, right? These are all things that people fear. I don't care how you voted. They fear that. Okay? Doesn't matter what letter is next to their name or what color their hair is or if they even have hair. They fear those things. What is a question you could ask them that would get them to open up just a little bit more? 15 seconds. Ready, set, go. One question you could ask somebody that's afraid to find out how to talk to them. Okay, what's a question you could ask somebody that's afraid of something? Ooh, tell me more about that. Right? How's your day going? Oh, well, way better than those people. What? Tell me about that. Want to talk about? Yeah, I'd like to know more about that. Now they'll look at you like you got two heads, but maybe they'll talk. Other questions you could ask somebody. Ooh, what do you think we ought to do about that? What do you think would fix that? That's a good one, right? I don't know, man. I don't know. I got this awful diagnosis, and I just don't know. What do you think would make you feel more at peace about that? Notice how we just go a little bit deeper. We've lost the art of conversation, haven't we? We all used to do this. Now we just mad punch buttons on a computer and blow it out into the interwebs. Getting to know your audience, getting to know people. Paul's first day in Athens is not when he's delivering this sermon. What has he done for days and days and days? He's talked to people. He's observed. He's talking with them. He's going to the marketplace where they are. He's having conversations with them. He's talking to people in the checkout line and asking them genuine questions. How's your day? And not expecting to get, Hey, good morning. How are you? Me too. No. How's your day going? Well, that's pretty good. Really? What's good about it? I've got a friend named Jed. He can get a fence post to open up about its feelings. He'll just stand next to you with a smile on his face and just keep asking you questions. We need to be like that. Not to annoy people, not to make fun of people, but to find out what's actually bothering them. And we know that the answer to what's ultimately bothering them is that there's a deficit in their relationship with the Lord. And we may not be the one that gets to bring them all the way to that, but maybe we can point them on the right path so that we plant the seed, but Apollos waters, but ultimately, who gives the growth? God does. So that's Paul's masterclass on how to talk to people that don't know God. You might find somebody here who doesn't know the Lord. So go talk to them. It's fellowship time. We've got 13 and a half minutes. Talk to somebody you don't know. Grab some refreshments. We'll join together for worship.